try not to.
All right, well, we'll get things kicked off here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. My name is Dan Brooks. I am the Business Advocacy Director at the Billings Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our Coffee with Candidates Ward 3. This series of events we put on to give our members in the community an opportunity to hear what the candidates have to say, get to know our candidates a little bit better, and see who they will be voting for come November. So thanks for joining us. I want to quickly say thanks to our business advocacy sponsors who are on the table tents in front of you there. Without their contributions, we wouldn't be able to host great events like this. So please have a look there on those table tents to see who those sponsors are. We have a couple in the room. KLJ is with us. Anybody that I'm missing other than on the placard? Not at the moment, but thanks to them. As usual, the way that we'll run this, I've got some scripted questions here for our candidates, but I don't want that to be the only questions that we ask here. This is an opportunity for you to ask those burning questions that you have of our election candidates. So be thinking of those about midway through the hour. We'll open it up for that. But before we get started here, I want to turn it over to Laura here with the Billings Association of Realtors, just to say a couple quick words about services that you offer, things that you do for the community, and the impact that you have.
Thank you. I'm Laura Drager, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Government Affairs Committee here with the Billings Association of Realtors. I see we have our President, Frosty Urban, here, and I just wanted to mention to everybody that while as realtors, we're busy buying and selling homes with our clients, we're also really actively involved in the community. And Frosty serves on several committees, so it's interesting to hear him report back on the things that are going around the committee. I serve on the Heights Task Force, the Water Board, and so while we are definitely realtors, we're also really involved and we care about our community. So we're very pleased to host this event today. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dan. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so we will run this kind of like a fantasy football snake draft. We'll start with one candidate and over, and then just reverse that for the next questions. And we will limit answers to 2 minutes apiece, so kind of keep that in mind. Jack will give a quick notification when we're about 10 seconds out, so you can kind of wrap up that thought. But we'll just start out with kind of a quick introduction of yourself, your background and experience, why you're running or running again, and maybe a little bit about the ward and the constituents that you serve or hope to serve. And we'll start with Councilmember Joy.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the sponsors, the Billings Association of Realtors, and that fine introduction. Thank you for serving on the boards that you do and your involvement in the community. I really appreciate all of that, and the chamber also. One of the reasons I'm running for re-election is I think that the work in Ward 3 is not done. We continually have questions of annexation, of development in every area of town. And we have to balance out the needs of our built city and the needs of our growing city, and that's a balance that has to be made. We make huge investments when we talk about expanding and annexing, and that's very much a part of a Realtors Association concern. That has to be balanced out as we have aging infrastructure, deferred maintenance. Some of the questions that I sometimes ask is, if we're going to put resources into this, where do those resources come from? Does that create deferred maintenance? I think if you've watched the news, you've watched some cities that have some tremendous issues that have come up from the pipes in our city only are expected to last about 50 years. Some of them are on deferred maintenance schedules where we're expecting them to last 80 years. The city of Los Angeles had some very difficult and expensive problems that came from deferred maintenance. So that's always a question that I ask when we're asked to put more resources into new infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge?
So my name's Charlie Loveridge, and I want to thank the Chamber for having us today, and also the Association, Realtors Association, for having me. I'm very grateful for that. Firstly, I'm running for Ward 3. I was born, raised, and educated in our town. I raised 4 kids in this town as well. I'm married to a beautiful and wildly understanding wife, and I have 4 kids, all of which are in Billings and going to school at various different places. One thing, I was raised with Montana values. I've won several state championships in basketball and baseball, representing our town as well as the great state of Montana. And I've coached the Billings youth since I was 19 years old, including 12 years of coaching at Billings Central and my alma mater, the mighty Bronx of Billings Senior High. I've also coached various travel teams, et cetera, et cetera. And altogether, I've probably coached about 2,000 of our brightest youths of Montana, or of Billings. My company is called VIP Services. I started working there when I was 19 years old, when I was in college up at the Harvard on the Hill Eastern Montana College. 11 years later, I bought the company from my boss / father-in-law with a handshake and the stupidity of youth, knowing full well I was going to make this happen. 16 years later, I shook his hand again and I paid him off, and I've owned the company ever since. One of the things about being a business owner in Billings, Montana, is you get to meet so many wonderful people, and there's a lot of you out there right now, so I'm really excited about that part of representing you folks. Lord Halifax said, "Service is the rent that we pay for our rooms on earth." I think that's interesting, and I believe wholeheartedly that serving our community is probably the best thing I can do going forward to give back to what it's given me.
All right, thank you. And we will start with you for this next question. What is your long-term vision for Billings 25 years from now? How do you intend, potentially in the next 8 or 4 years, to make a positive impact on the way there?
Well, firstly, we need to provide a safe, vibrant, sustainable community while striving to constantly improve the quality of life for our citizens and economic partners, and also to increase tax revenues accruing to the city through economic growth, not beating up our citizens with new taxes every other day. Increase the median household income for the city residents through economic growth as well. Raise the average salary of jobs through education and business growth. Inventory our buildings, properties, and areas of the city that are underutilized. Identify and facilitate new infrastructure development to enhance and stimulate private commercial development and investment. We can't ask the government to give us economic growth. We have to ask our entrepreneurs. Work with owners and investors interested in developing properties in the city. Let them know we're open for business. We want to do business with you folks, and we want to grow accordingly. Solicit interest in the community by prospective new businesses, and make property owners, developers, and prospective new businesses aware of financing options that are available. I think we did that with the Burger Dive. I think that was one of the things the city did. That was pretty cool. Preserve the vitality of the downtown as a major economic center. We need to grow that. And there's certain things I think that are going on right now that are going to help do that going forward. We need to provide the highest quality of police, emergency preparedness, communications, and fire and rescue services we possibly can, with properly trained personnel who are prepared for a wide variety of emergencies and who serve the community in an effective and coordinated manner. We have to improve our emergency preparedness and hazard mitigation efforts to ensure restoration of our city services and normal enjoyment of life for a natural way of life. Partner with the Emergency Response Service and Casey Williams to develop an emergency command center. I think that's something we need to absolutely look into sooner than later.
Thank you. Councilwoman Joy, same question. What is your long-term vision for Billings 25 years from now? How do you intend, potentially in the next 4 years, to make a positive impact on the way there?
Thank you for the question. I think investment in downtown has a tremendous impact on Ward 3. When you drive from downtown, you don't go very far and you're in Ward 3, along Grand Central and Broadwater. That revitalization of downtown is central. It cannot, when we have a downtown, we had an application to create a new TIF on the western side of downtown. That failed the majority of council. However, that has a tremendous impact on Ward 3. When we drive down Grand Avenue, you're very quickly into Ward 3. If the downtown is not thriving, the impact on Ward 3 is quite dramatic. We have aging infrastructure, we have aging places of business. All of those things can be revitalized. But it takes a thriving business community, it takes a thriving downtown in order to have that spillover. And that really is spillover. As you drive down Grand Avenue, you see houses that have been converted into businesses. Some of those look good, some of them do not. That depends on the success of that business as to how well those look. And that synergy of what happens downtown and how that spills out into Ward 3 is very important. One Big Sky had some really great aspects to it, and that was the economic vitalization of our downtown and that kind of economic energy. How that went forward is now somewhat history, but one of the things that is not history from One Big Sky is the thought process and the possibilities that were really planted in us at council as to what could be. And that is something that can absolutely move forward regardless of what the legislature does. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this next question will start again with you, Councilwoman. The Billings Chamber's policy priorities are workforce development, tax reform, and public safety. We hope to address all of them, but some may be more important than others. For you, what is your number one priority to grow the Billings economy? And you don't have to select just from our list.
Thank you. Tax reform is definitely my number one priority, and I can just bounce off of One Big Sky and the 406 impact zone that could have been created. We have a charter that limits the number of mills that we can collect. That's a really difficult thing when you now hear Billings is the number one growth area in terms of housing. How do we do that with a city charter that completely caps that mill? We can't do that. We cannot provide the quality of services or the services that would be expected with that type of growth up against that. Tax reform. No, we don't want to bury our property tax owners. That is not our intention. That is what we are given by the Montana legislature to deal with. That is what we're left with. It is the most unpopular tax. People hate it. Guess what? That's what we get. We don't get income tax. We get property taxes. So that is an absolutely important thing that we need to address. I know that there was a legislative interim committee to look at the way that we fund government. That is absolutely important to the possibilities for how Billings will grow, the kind of services that we provide. Property tax is a very old, archaic type of tax. I know that there were candidates and now the new governor, they talked about income tax, but that's not the only possibilities. There are other possibilities. So I think that we as a council are left with special districts that are now going to sunset and property tax. We have a few assessments that we can do in other areas. That's our limitation. When I have constituents call me and say, I'm on a fixed income, don't raise my property taxes, I'm totally empathetic to that. However, based on the way that we structure our taxes in the state, I don't have a lot of choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge, for you, what is your number one priority to grow the Billings economy?
Well, the one thing I know is nobody's ever taxed themselves into prosperity, so we certainly don't want to go down that road. Development of the entrepreneurial group. We need to create an environment where people want to do business and then identify and support those entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs and other local champions should find ways to prop up local innovators. Support their risk-taking, connect them to others in entrepreneurial groups. Give these entrepreneurs every chance to succeed to grow our economy. Strong social capital. Successful small communities have cultivated a strong social fabric with relationships that go deep and durable over a long period of time. Successful communities identify and engage residents to help craft and implement a long-term vision. Equally important to extend citizen engagement to the youngest of residents, including school children and young adults. Dedication to progress. Repeatedly, that's what we need. We absolutely need to dedicate ourselves to progress every single time we sit down on a Monday night as a councilperson, and say, hey, we need to dedicate ourselves and move forward with our economy. We need to repeatedly look and find that success in lots of cultures or in lots of communities, the youth leave, right? That's our greatest asset right now is our youth, I think, in Billings. They leave, but we want to create a cool city, right? Like Fonzarelli cool. So people want to come back and raise their families here and bring their talents back to Billings and make us even better. And that's one of the things that I've talked about lots of times is we need to make sure we have the amenities and the certain things that create economic growth and bring back that talent to our community.
Thank you. And we will start with you on this next question. Do you support the 2021 Public Safety Mill Levy? If so, what public safety outcomes are you looking for in evaluating its success? And if not, how would you address Billings' public safety concerns without a mill levy?
I absolutely support our firefighters, police, and first responders. No question about it. Every single day, these neighbors of ours risk their lives for our community, and they deserve the very best we have to offer. Efficiencies throughout both departments, starting with updating their facilities. I am a little concerned as I was listening to the city council meeting the other night at the end of it after they've decided to buy the Stillwater building for $17.1 million. It was brought up as how council member Denise said, do we know how we're going to pay for this? I think that was mentioned. I thought that was an interesting question, and it scared the heck out of me when I heard that question. But anyhow, if in fact we do figure out how to get that building, that would be awesome for efficiencies with our police department. Denise said the other night at our task force meeting, it would help with the efficiencies with our policemen not running back and forth between downtown and the West End. And I think that's a smart idea. I do believe, though, we need to be a little smarter about what we're spending on that. It sounds pretty expensive, especially if we have to add another $9 million to renovate it. We need to hire more civilian personnel. That would promote a cost savings using untrained civilians as opposed to trained officers to do paperwork. That would help the patrolmen and detectives work more efficiently, creating a civilian career ladder plan to utilize civilian personnel. Improving case management software for investigations, personal investigations, eliminate outdated spreadsheets. This is a simple way to help the department, very simple. Improvements for the fire departments are needed as well, including the possibility of at least one new station in the southwest quarter and perhaps another in the Heights. This is a short list of the center, that we need for public services. However, with the influx of new people, not all of them solid citizens, by the way, and the drug problem on the rise in Billings, we need to continue to support these public services to actually save money in the long run.
Thank you. Councilwoman, same question. Do you support the 2021 Public Safety Mill Levy? If so, what public safety outcomes are you looking for in evaluating its success? If not, how would you address Billings' public safety concerns without a mill levy?
Thank you. Yes, I do support our public safety mill levy. I supported a more robust public safety mill levy ask before the election, the public safety mill levy that passed. Yes, I do. How would I measure that success? When we get our police officers out of the cars, that's when we will start to measure success. Public safety is built on relationships. And when they're in those little blue racers running around town trying to cover this tremendous city from 67th, even past 62nd, all the way to the end of the Heights, Lake Elmo. They're in little blue racers. They're little tiny cars that are constantly zooming around this city. We build public safety off of relationships. Their ability to come to you, to run between calls, to come to you, and to deliver good public safety is impacted by their being so busy and that constant movement and running to calls. So I will measure our success when they're out of their cars, when they are able to engage with the diversity of our community on a face-to-face basis, where we can establish some of the things that are needed for proactive policing and prevention. We will never be able to react our way out of public safety. We have to be in that area of prevention and proactive policing, and that means a tremendous investment. That's more expensive than the constant racing and reacting that actually happens right now. That's a really important, and I would also like to point out, we have a $1.3 million gap. It never went away. And we are also at that point in our discussions and negotiations with the unions for the coming cost of living increase. So we're in a very difficult budget situation right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come right back to you with this question here. Billings has grown over the last decade and will likely see increased growth as more people seek to move to Montana. How should Billings, as the largest urban center in the state, be proactive about planning, whether that's zoning, transportation, et cetera, to ensure we are ready for this growth?
Absolutely. Thank you. We are going to grow. We rewrote our zoning codes, and I think we've arrived at a very good spot. We're coming up for our quarterly report, so we'll see what issues might have been identified that need to continue to be worked on. But we absolutely need to understand that people who are moving here will expect to have parks. They will expect that to happen. We have worked with Land Trust, and they have done preliminary work to help us understand what it may take for us to put further investment in parks. But Centennial Park, how many years did it take us to put money into that? It looks good now. It will look better and better. But the West End has grown tremendously without that corresponding investment in parks. We have Cottonwood Park that it continues to deteriorate. We've got a wonderful partnership with Landon's Legacy for the park on the West End. So we continue to work, but you must look at where we are in terms of our amenities in order to provide for that. Downtown, and in the downtown area, housing. This is another area that we have identified as a need that continues to be needed to work on. The eBird has worked on that some, but downtown housing is another area where we need to address the lifestyle that the new people who will be coming into the city expect. And downtown living is a part of what younger people are really drawn to. So I guess I'm usually looking at him to see if I'm running out of town. Sorry. One of the funding sources that we could look at is a dedicated mill levy for our parks. A dedicated mill levy might be where we're at. But then again, we're up against our mill levy cap. So we have to continue to think about these ways. The way we fund our parks right now doesn't work. We have deferred maintenance. We have water. One of the things that constituents are really bothered by, and rightly so, when they see water running down the street from our old sprinkler systems that can't water without an automation, that's an inefficiency in water use that we need to address.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We've got a question on parks coming up. We can dive into that here in a second.
All right, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Same question to you, Mr. Loveridge. How should Billings, as the largest urban center in the state, be proactive about planning, zoning, transportation, et cetera, to ensure we are ready for this growth?
Well, as a businessman, it's simple. Economic growth. We need more money in our community. A lot of you already know that I'm very committed to our Metro Park Master Plan. Now we call it the Metro Park Vision as we move forward. I've presented to Mike's on our one of our steering committees and Laura. So one of the things I look at is how do we grow the economy? How do we grow the economy as opposed to just hope that maybe we can have people want to come here because we build more parks? Parks are great. But you know what people want to come do? They want to come have fun, and they want to have a place where they can go see a concert and go do these sorts of things. So that's why I'm so passionate about the possible economic growth that we would have if, in fact, we did something like the Metro Park with the different amenities. For example, a smaller arena. People get really excited about an amphitheater. I can see us doing like zoo grass events like we've done in the past and promoting the zoo again. I would love to see that because, quite frankly, there's something right there that I think we could really expand on and look to grow as well. So for me, it's about moving forward and getting our community to invest in projects like that. I believe the Metro Park will take and make Colson Park happen. I believe that to be true. I think one will float the other. I think if we do something like Metro Park and we grow that, it's going to take and revitalize some of your downtown living that you talked about, Denise. I think it'll help move west and revitalize the Fifth Street corridor, as you spoke about the other night. That's exciting. I didn't understand all of it, but I've never claimed to be that smart. So I was watching that. What? So it was a little fuzzy on my computer screen too. But with that being said, that's how we grow. That's how we grow Billings. We do it through economic growth. We don't do it through taxing ourselves to death. We do it through economic growth. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we're about midway through, so be thinking about those questions. I've got maybe 1, 2 more here I'd like to ask, and then we can turn it over to the audience for question and answer. We'll start with Mr. Loveridge on this one. The state legislature passed a law in the 2021 session which will require Billings voters to reauthorize Park District 1, an important source of parks funding in the near future. What should City Council strategy be to fund parks, an essential amenity for talent attraction in the next several years?
So yes, the state legislature did pass a law requiring the funding to go before the people every 13 years. I believe there should be a sunset on funding sources. The landowners that pay for this each year with their property taxes should be aware what they're paying for and have their priorities heard. Not every year, but I think 13 years is plenty of time for that to go. Many people may think this is negative for the parks. I actually look at it as a possibility. If people want more parks, they're going to be willing to pay more for parks. So then you would go out in front of them and we talk to them and we say, hey, this is what we would like to do. Here's our plan. This is going to be great for Billings for reason A, B, C, D, and E. Now, please vote yes for this. This is an opportunity for them to get more money for the parks as opposed to where they're at right now, where they're leveled off. Essentially, this forces the transparency of the government to go before the taxpayers, which is good. I'm in favor of this. Government entities that are leery of transparency. This smoke is killing me. Sorry about my voice today. Transparency make me really nervous. If they don't want to tell us what's going on and they want to keep raising our mills and on different things, that makes me really nervous. As a taxpayer and a property owner, and I sure feel like I pay my fair share of taxes, that makes me upset actually as a citizen of Billings, Montana. I want to know what my monies are being paid for or are paying for. I think that's the most important thing we can do for our community is let them know how we're spending their money and be tremendous stewards of their money. That should be our first and foremost obligation to them.
Thank you. All right, coming to you, Councilwoman, with the same question. What should City Council strategy be to fund parks, an essential amenity for talent attraction in the next several years?
Thank you. I sort of answered that a little bit in the other one too, so I won't repeat myself. But we have a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance. So one of the things that kind of happens is that as politicians, we like to cut ribbons, ribbon cutting, you get your name in the newspaper. We do that for amenities at our parks. We don't do that for bathrooms. So one of the things that feedback from constituents has been the concern that some of our older parks, the bathrooms have gone into disrepair, they're locked, and so you have to use the porta potty. We had a constituent call that was quite concerned about why do we have to use, if we paid for these parks and we have bathrooms, why are we having to use the porta potty? Because they haven't been repaired. And each year, before our budget, the City Council sets the assessments for Park District 1. We decide every single year how much that assessment will be. We do not have to raise that assessment every year. That is a matter of council discretion and council thought as to whether or not we need to raise that assessment. So if Park District 1 goes away, we will lose that ability to make those assessments. But it is within the city council's right to set those assessments. If you don't have a bathroom at a park, it's really kind of inconvenient. Who wants to leave the park after they've been there an hour because you need to use the restroom? A dedicated mill levy, that is a possibility. That goes before the voters. If the voters choose to have that mill levy, then that's what they will have their money invested in. I think there was a lot of information at the legislature about our special district that is not correct. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, audience, what burning questions might you have for our candidates? Yes, Katie. Thank you, and I apologize, I'm going to have to interject after each question. We want to make sure we get this recording for our members who couldn't make it, so I'll kind of repeat those questions, hopefully in a manner that reflects exactly the intent of the question. So I think we're with you, Councilwoman, here. What is a short-term win that you can discuss about the downtown, and then what should the long-term vision for downtown be?
Thank you. I really think a short-term win is some of the work that has been done on wayfinding and signage downtown. I really, when the DBA came to council with that, I really thought at the beginning, well, that's not a tremendous amount, but it's a short-term win to be able to walk downtown, see some good signage. I really think coming forward with the application for changing some of the exteriors are short-term wins. Absolutely. SEPTEB, we know that downtown safety, and that is an obstacle, a perception that is an obstacle to a more vibrant downtown. So what we can put into SEPTED, the downtown is now applying for putting in a public restroom. I absolutely think those are short-term wins that can have a big impact for downtown. We have to continue to talk about safety. It's a perception. It might not be everyone's reality, but it is a perception that we need to continue to work on. So I absolutely think that wayfinding, the signage that you're doing, the exterior upgrades, absolutely. And then longer term, we have to look at the vacancy. That's a tremendous issue. The vacancies downtown, the empty buildings, those are really areas where with the right economic tools, I think that we can fill those buildings, make that sidewalk vibrant, have people down there, have housing down there. I think those are all possibilities, but the economic tools have to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge, would you like me to try to repeat the great question?
No, it was a great question. I've got it. I memorized it, Katie. I'll think about it in my sleep. Thank you. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it. So short term, and I know I'll harken back because it's something it's literally my second full-time job now, running for candidacy is my third full-time job, so I'm filling my days. But the Metro Park, that's a short-term thing. That's going to happen, and we're going to put that to vote in March. If that happens, it's absolutely going to float the boat and move into the downtown area. Long-term has to be policing in the downtown. We have ourselves some problems, and for some reason we haven't brought it up. We have dead people in our streets, guys. We have people shooting each other. We have gunfights behind Jake's, and nobody's talking about it. We literally have gunfights behind Jake's. Nobody talks about it. We have Sergeant Becker said that we have 4 overdose deaths a day in Billings, Montana right now. That's what he told us. Remember him telling us? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what he tells us. I talked to Chief Valdez yesterday. Spoke with him. Great guy. There are 700 more calls right now than they had last year. 700. That's alarming to me, and I think long term, to make the downtown. I talked to Nick at Desmond's. He's got the same guy who lives outside his shop every day. And he creeps people out when they walk by. He says stuff to them. And then the fine men from the police department, welcome, sir. They come in and they run him off, and he's back the next day. That's stymie's business. My daughter, who's 13, doesn't want to go down there. It scares her. So that's what stymies business down in the downtown, and we need to be proactive about that. We need to give our boys in blue the opportunity to fix that. That's our real problem in the downtown. Also, I would also love to see long-term, I'd love to see more living spaces, more apartments, back to the cool stuff, right? People do want to live down there, and that'll also revitalize businesses as well as the downtown area. Thank you.
Becky. Thank you. And the question is there a role for the city in prevention and substance abuse treatment work?
Is this for me?
Yes, coming to you. Yes, sir.
Sure, it's on me now. Great. Absolutely. I was sitting and talking to Rod Ostermiller the other day, he was our U.S. Marshal, and now he's up at the Mental Health Center. And one of the things that they're talking about doing, and one of the things I bring to the table as a candidate, is I'm able to work with the county commissioners. As a rule, I've had a great relationship with them, and I do believe I can bring some of that relationship from us to the county commissioners. But one of the things that they're talking about through the mental health center is going down and working with folks in the jail themselves, and also partnering with the Rimrock Foundation as well. And I think that's where we need to look at it as far as those folks. That would be exactly where we need to go as a city, is encourage that communication with the county and helping those people stay off the drugs. You know, some of them, there's folks out there that have some serious mental health problems, and they need to be dealt with. And unfortunately, they usually don't have the monies to pay for that. That's something that we need to partner with the county with and help those folks and get them off the streets and make them awesome citizens in our city.
Thank you. Councilwoman, same question.
Thank you very much. Our public safety mill levy has some dedicated money to go towards that, because we absolutely know we partner with nonprofits. We do not provide the kinds of services that are necessary in order to deal with substance disorders and those types of things. So we really need to deepen our relationships to the nonprofits and make sure that we are doing the best we can to utilize you to provide those services, and at the same time support that. And I think that support isn't just through some mill, but the real interest in council in helping to deal with that. And sometimes I think that it's very difficult for us as council members to dig into the problem. So Phoenix House was in Ward 3. We have sober living facilities that are throughout the city, and we have gone to the legislature to ask for some clarification in terms of how those are happening, because we do get feedback from residents about concerns about sober living that are throughout the city. So I think we have to continue to deepen our knowledge and our connection to those nonprofits that provide those services, and make sure that we as council are supporting that work and understanding it, understanding the difficulties of dealing with a person who may have a substance abuse disorder for 50 or 60 years of their lifetime is something that will not be easily handled. And I think that there are downtown organizations, First Church in particular, that is doing a tremendous amount of work and outreach. So we need to continue to partner with those. Thank you.
Thank you. Got Brenda Moss in the back. Then I'll get to you, Councilman. Yeah, if I can paraphrase, what's the role of council in leading as we likely see a great economic boom moving forward here?
Thank you. I think it takes a change of mindset on the part of council. Council has been reactive. Council has been quite conservative in looking at what it takes to actually have the size city that we do have, that will be even bigger. I think that's a change in mindset. I think it's an understanding of what it takes to invest and to lead is is really, really important. It's going to take a change in mindset. We have to look, a lot of times things come forward to us as council in piecemeal, annexation here, a subdivision there. Those are all very piecemeal. We make those decisions based on those one vote items. But what we need to be thinking is at that bigger level, at that higher level, how do we look at our housing needs? I sit with the CBD board as ex officio. There are some tremendous difficulties and challenges with housing in the city. And us being named number one, I really don't know what that will bring. And quite frankly, I can say I do not know. But I know that it's going to take a change in mindset, that it's going to take council being prepared to step forward in front of issues instead of waiting for something to come forward to deal with it. So it will change. It will have to, it will be a change in mindset. And I don't think, actually, as you asked that question, one of the things that I've been very surprised about is the flooding in Germany. Those of us who are not thinking about our environment and what happens as our river changes and our city grows, we need to also be out there in front of a lot more issues than we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge?
Thanks for the question, Brenda. So if we have more people, we need more housing. Pretty simple. Unless we have them living with us, and I don't have enough room for all those folks. So first, we need to make Billings a place that welcomes the business and the development. Businesses across the country are looking for places in municipalities that they can work with. If we build it, they will come type mentality. That'll also inspire the economy and it'll allow us to build more homes. If we are to address the housing shortage, though, we need to make it easier to build houses. We need to tackle zoning and permitting issues. We need to cut the red tape. So lots of times it's redundant. The state has a requirement. The city has a requirement. Now they've got to get the okay from the state, and they have to get the okay from the city. And meanwhile, it's costing money. And that's a real problem with some of our developers. We also need to prioritize on how we grow the city, and I think this is where the city council can help. We need to start growing up, not out. Out is expensive. When we annex county area, that's very expensive. Now we've got to put in the water and the sewer and all the different things. That's very expensive. Sidewalks, very expensive to annex county properties. So if we're not growing out and we're growing up, it doesn't cost as much for the city to deal with, obviously. And then also, I've talked to some developers, and they're not all against the possibility of having impact fees to the city. So, for example, when they do annex, there's a possibility of having a decent-sized impact fee that helps pay for some of these fees that come along with the annexation. Because the city takes a terrible bath when it comes to having to pay for all that. I know we get the property taxes, but it takes a long time for that investment to get paid for.
Thank you. Councilman Boyette? All right, I'm going to leave out the cats. How are you going to find consensus among a majority of your council members?
My first?
Yes, sir.
I was thinking of arm wrestling. That's a possibility, right? Denise, you want to go?
Yeah, sure, fine.
I'm actually scared I'd lose, to be honest with you. Well, so one of the things about me, and you maybe don't, and Mike could tell you, you have to work with people. You have to find out what they like and what they want. We got to find compromise. What compromise is the thing of kings and noblemen. It's got to be true. It was in the movie Braveheart. That's a quote from the movie. But I always thought that was a great quote. That there's compromise that has to come with everything. If you're married, you understand compromises every single day, and it's the same in business. Every day, I work with customers, be it Mike or Frosty, whoever it happens to be. I work with these folks, and sometimes they want stuff that, boy, we can't do. So we need to understand compromise, and we need to reach out, and we have to reach across the aisle, so to speak, because you definitely is partisan, no question about that. We need to be able to work together on that stuff and talk to each other, and I think allow each other to have communications. That just like with the county. We need to be able to go walk across the street and talk to the county commissioners and find out what they want to do, and then see what we want to do and see if we can't work together. There's nothing more important than us being able to work with them. After all, that's just common sense. That's simple common sense. If we work together for the police department or whoever it happens to be, things are going to get done. Things need to get done. Now, I could easily put myself over in the corner and say, nope, that's how it's going to be. That's how it's always been. Well, that's just crazy. Who does that? How do you ever get anything done? You don't. So being able to compromise and work with those folks, and part of it is sitting down and saying, Mike, let's go have a cup of coffee and let's talk about this and let's find out where we're at. And Mike would say, absolutely, let's do that, and sit down. Your ideas, my ideas, we spitball a little bit. Next thing you know, we come up with a pretty good plan and we move forward.
Thank you. Councilwoman, same question.
Thank you. Yes, we do have to work together. We need to communicate with each other. But I think some of what really is difficult for council is that very often we're asked to make decisions without having any real data. Or since I started, I have continued to say we need a cost of services model that really tells us how much we're investing and what that rate of return is on our investment in terms of infrastructure or other things. And so sometimes I think we're left making decisions without having the kind of data, the kind of real number crunching that would help us move forward on some things where we get tripped up and we get a lot of feeling and opinion about it, but not necessarily a clear answer to what would be the best investment. So our cost of services and use of data, I think that our CPSM study that showed the efficiencies that we could create through the use of civilian, non-sworn officer civilians, that kind of study, deep dive into our study of our management and operation of police, I think makes decision-making so much easier. And we don't have to rely on opinions that can be quite far apart. And that's our cost of services. What about the inner belt loop? Do we want to invest that $7 million? Because right now we're being asked to put $7 million into the inner belt loop. If we had data and cost of services type analysis, I think that it would be much easier for council to step back from an opinion of what we should do and make a decision based on better data of what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably time for one more. Cody. So what are you doing actively to assist and advocate for the continuum of care and those folks downtown and around the city in need of that assistance?
Thank you. I think one of the things that is helpful is if we back off of stereotypes, and that has happened even within council. We need to step back and see the human beings that are downtown, or in 24th and Grand, or 24th and Central. We have to step back and see those people as human beings. If, as a council member, I cannot see a human being and I only see a problem that needs to be taken away, disappeared, go away, I don't want to see it, then I'm not representing the people of this city or my ward. Every single person is as equally represented on that council, or they're not represented at all. And so I think that sometimes it takes a shift in how we understand our problems. So I appreciate that, Cody. The continuum of care, I said ex officio on the continuum of care, and that's a very high level, community innovations. On community innovations, that's really important for me to hear service providers come in and say, these are the problems that we have. These are the individuals who are being impacted by not being homed, by having substance abuse disorders. I need to hear that because that's actually some of the people that I need to represent. And so I think it needs sometimes to be that we step back and take a broader look at it and actually see individuals in crisis. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Cody. And that's in, I didn't know his name. I've said hi to him when I walk by. I'm like, hey man, how you doing? You know, I'm not on the city council, so I'm not doing anything. I don't have the power to do something at that point is all relative. However, I employ 43 people. I help them. I help their families. I make sure they have food on their tables. I make sure we don't go out of business next week. That's my biggest responsibility. Yeah, right. Yeah, I make sure payroll's done every week. You know, so that's what I do within my circle. However, if I'm so fortunate to get elected, that is definitely has to be something that we have to start looking at. It's a definite problem, and those folks do need help. There's no question about that. How we go about that? Boy, I don't have the magic answer, because if the magic answer was out there, the city council would have already done it. And obviously it hasn't happened, because they're still there, right? They're still having problems, and those folks still have problems on the streets. So for the help, I hear about the bathroom. I don't know enough about that to give you an honest answer. I get opinions from all over the city about that, positive and negative. I hear them all. And I say, man, you know, how does this work in other communities? So that's definitely something. Maybe we touch base with other communities, Missoula, Salt Lake City. I've been told Salt Lake City's done a really good job working with the homeless. So maybe there's some stuff that we can do, some public outreach, and talk to those folks and get some information on some plans that they've done. And I think that's probably definitely where I would go if I was on city council, is begin going out there and researching it and saying, okay, here's what we have, Mike, or whoever it happens to be I'm talking to, on this fellow council person. Here's where we're at. This is what we should start looking at. And then maybe going out there and talking to folks and saying, let's see if we can make this happen. So that's what I would do, Cody. Thank you for the question.
All right. Well, we've got just a couple more minutes left. I want to give a little bit of time here for our candidates to make some kind of closing, final remarks. Go ahead and make the case for your candidacy and the Ward 3 residents' vote. We'll start with you, Mr. Loveridge.
Oh, I get to be first?
You get to be first.
Yes.
Awesome.
Isn't that great?
I'm in a big family. I'm never first. Are you kidding? Anyhow, so a couple reasons why I ran is to serve, to give back to the community that's given so much to me. I love this city. It means so much to me. Being born and raised here as a third generation Loveridge, if you will, it means a ton to me. I've seen so many things. I've done so many things. My whole life has been here. I do believe that the city council definitely could use some private sector common sense. I see things on the city council that alarm me, and I wonder why it's happening. And I know it's oftentimes they ask questions and they do things that I'm absolutely stunned sometimes. I want to compliment Denise. Thank you for your hard work for the last 4 years. It's a lot of work, isn't it, Mike? You guys are there a lot. You're probably emailing all the time. But I think I'm ready for that. As I've done this Metro Park thing, I found myself to be more and more attracted to making the community better, to figure out what I can do to make the community better, to be able to go and support the police department, the fire department, to go and support the people of Ward 3. I'm concerned about Ward 3. I see things that haven't happened. We went to the trail net last week and we talked, and one of the things I said was, hey, how many safe paths to school for our children are in Ward 3? Well, if safe paths are sidewalks, there's a lot, but they haven't made any in Ward 3. That to me, I wonder why they're all in the West End and the Heights. Why aren't they in my ward? There's a good question right there, I think. And that's the kind of thing, I'll fight for my ward. Every day I'll fight for my ward, but I'm also going to fight for Billings. The one thing I do is I get things done. And I've been my whole life been able to get things done, and I've been able to lead and make that happen. And I plan on leading and working hard to get things done in Ward 3 for our community.
Thank you. To you, Councilwoman.
Oh, thank you. I guess the first question, I really didn't say a lot about my background. I work for School District 2. I work with kids with special needs. I grew up in Hardin. My grandparents lived in the Triangle, which is now referred to as the Triangle on the south side. My father graduated from senior high, and I spent a lot of time here in Billings. both with my grandparents and with my aunt who lived in the Heights. And so Billings is it is a magical city. I really have always felt that. Everybody wanted to come to Billings when we were, who wanted to go to Hardin? Nobody came to Hardin for fun. Everyone came to Billings. The Metro Park is a very good memory for me. The kinds of shows and programs, absolutely. I appreciate Mr. Loveridge's work on Metro Park, and I appreciate you stepping up to run. It's not easy.
I appreciate that.
This is being on the city council is really hard work. You read thousands of pages, you make decisions, you're constantly email constituents, but you have to keep that eye on the bigger picture. You have to keep that eye on that larger issue. Ward 3 is absolutely a priority for what I do, and then it has to be balanced with the entire city. So it is a constant balancing act. As you move forward, you see needs that are not being met. You look at your resources, you look at your funding, and you say, how can we do that? How can we do that not only for Ward 3, but for the entire city? As I've said, you either grow your pie or you cut a smaller slice. And that has been what we have done with economic development, the tools that we didn't get from the legislature, and our need to continue to work on economic tools for redevelopment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks to both of our candidates. Let's give them a round of applause. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Thank you to Billings Association of Realtors for hosting us. Thank you to our business advocacy sponsors. And everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Good job.